In today's video, I'm gonna go over 5 books that changed my life and maybe could yours too. Hang around. What's up, you guys? If you're new to the channel, my name's Zach with Dr. Eyeball MD. I'm a second-year ophthalmology resident. In this channel, I talk about everything from medical school to ophthalmology to kind of just day-in-the-life doctor-style videos. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, consider subscribing down below and leaving a like on this video if you find any value from it. So for everybody part of the community on the channel who's interested in medicine and that kind of thing, I'm gonna be coming out with a video probably within a week or so where we're gonna interview a medical retina specialist in ophthalmology, so a doctor who did ophthalmology and then did a fellowship in medical retina. We're gonna ask her like what that was like doing the fellowship, kind of what's a day in the life of being a medical retina specialist, why someone might pursue that instead of surgical retina. So kind of just getting into that. If you're interested in ophthalmology or curious about kind of the different options out of ophthalmology, we're gonna interview her. Hopefully we'll have that video out within the next week or so. So be on the lookout for that. So the other thing is go down in the comments of this video and leave questions about medical school or ophthalmology, because I'm gonna make a Q&A style video to answer some of y'all's questions about ophthalmology, about medical school, because I get a lot of questions about that stuff. So if you leave the questions down in the comments of this video, I'll try to make a video and address those questions. And I'll try to include all of them if I can. All right, let's get into the video. Let's get into the 5 books that changed my life. So all of these books are relatively short, pretty simple reads. They're all nonfiction books, and they're easy to read. You could read them within a weekend or so, or just get them on audiobooks and listen to them while you're in the car. I have a short attention span, so I like reading short books with just a good message and good point that you can take away from it. So none of these are too complicated, all very easy to read. So we'll start with number 5 and then we'll work our way up to number 1, with number 1 being kind of the most influential in my opinion. So we'll start with number 5, which is The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. This was a number 1 New York Times bestseller, and it was a Netflix special on basically her style of simplifying and tidying up your life, if you want to think of it like that. Basically what this book is getting at is how to kind of declutter your life and just have the material possessions in your life that you find value in, that actually bring you joy. So her process basically is where you would go through your house and you would go category by category and you would go through each item and then just decide what actually brings you joy or actually brings you happiness. Then you get rid of everything else, meaning you can donate it. So for example, my wife and I did this a couple years ago during medical school. We went through this process, and it's not a short process. It takes maybe multiple weekends or multiple days depending on how much clutter you have basically. But we started with clothes. We've got all our clothes, put them on the bed, and just went item by item, holding it, deciding, does this bring me joy? Do I like this? And if not, then you get rid of it, you donate it. And then you're just left with the things that actually have meaning to you, actually have sentimental value. And it's sort of kind of like my introduction to minimalism. It's kind of more just like decluttering, a little more of like a minimalistic approach to things, and just having the material possessions in your life that are actually meaningful. And then it kind of limits you in the future of going out and just wasting money, because you go through that mental process of having to decide what's actually meaningful to you. And so I think you're just less likely in the future to go wasting money on those things. Anyways, that's number 5. So number 4 on the list, and from here on out, the books are more geared toward like finance, personal finance, and investing, because for me, that was a huge missing puzzle piece in my education, was personal finance. For whatever reason, it was just kind of like a taboo subject growing up in our education system, talking about money. I don't know why. So a lot of these books kind of stemmed from my effort to kind of teach myself personal finance and that kind of thing. So number 4 on the list is also a number 1 New York Times bestseller, and it's The Automatic Millionaire. Basically what this book is getting at is how to automate your finances in such a way that you can't mess it up in the long term. For example, in the same way that taxes are gonna come out of your paycheck, you just automate, a certain amount of your money that you make from your job or whatever to go into savings, to go into investing, so that you don't have to think about it. I don't have to consciously decide, every 2 weeks with my paycheck, oh, this week I'm gonna, allocate 10% or 20% of the paycheck to invest or to save. It's just I go in once, into the bank account. I say do an automatic withdrawal into the savings account, into the Vanguard brokerage account. Just take out the money. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to know it. I just want to know that it's happening and it's going to be on autopilot. And that's kind of what this book is getting at, is how to automate your finances. And so that in the long run, you're going to be successful and your own psychology does not get in the way of you being successful, and your own emotions, basically. It's taking all that out of the equation, which, you think you have control of those things, but when you actually try to do it on your own, you realize that you probably don't. And so it's just better to automate those things. And then you can actually take the principle of kind of automating your finances and apply it to other parts of your life. For me, I've automated a lot of different things in my life so that I can focus on what I want to focus on, what I need to focus on, just by automating other things. And so you can kind of take the principles from this book and apply it in other ways. And I actually made a video on that if you guys want to check it out. Number 3 on the list, in this book is also a super short read, super easy read, and it's the Little Book of Common Sense Investing by John Bogle. He is the founder of Vanguard, and what I kind of took away from this book and the value that I found in it was that it introduced me to index funds, and kind of like, if you're going to invest, I think, a question for a lot of people is, where do you even start? And for me, I had no idea what I was doing. So I remember early on, 5 or 6 years ago, investing in oil, I didn't know anything about it, but I was putting money in different oil ETFs and things like that. But this book kind of introduced me to index funds, or just basically a low fee way of investing where you don't have to make, trade decisions, or you don't have to try to read financial reports and really understand a company's financials and decide, oh, this is a good one to invest in or not. I'm not that smart, and I don't understand finances or the market in a way that would allow me to be successful in that. And frankly, I don't want to invest the time or the energy to understand it, because I just don't care about it that much. If I can just kind of automate it and invest in index funds and know that they're going to, probably outperform most actively managed funds in the long run, then it's a no-brainer for me. I don't have to think about it. It's just all on autopilot. A part of the paycheck goes toward investing in index funds in Vanguard account every month. And so it's all on autopilot. And this is the book that kind of introduced me to that idea. So that's what I took away from this book. Number 2 on the list, keeping with kind of the lifestyle and financial theme in a way, is gonna be the book by Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Workweek. I don't have the hard copy anymore. I've lost it. This book is number 2 on the list because it was more of kind of a paradigm shift in my way of thinking about how I needed to be spending my time, and kind of the idea that I think a lot of us are, ingrained with from very early on in our education system, that we need to put in the 40-hour work week, or else we're not being productive, we're not contributing to society. It's just ingrained in our mind. We go to school from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. 5 days a week. That's our work schedule. Then we get a job, we work 9 to 5. That's our work schedule. We're just in this mindset that we have to be putting in this certain amount of hours for us to be a productive member of society. And for me, the 4-hour work week kind of gave me a new perspective that, that's not really true. It's not just that I need to be giving a certain amount of my time to reach the same level of productivity, or to provide the same value to other people. If it can be done in a more efficient, more productive way, then why would you not do that? And this book kind of rewired my brain to think that way. It's the kind of classical model that we're taught from our education system, which is rooted in the Industrial Revolution era education system all the way back to the mid-1800s, where we're just kind of trained to become, at that time it was like a factory worker. Now it's basically an employee. We're trained in the education system to be an employee, to go put in a certain amount of hours, and then you're just gonna find work to fill those hours. And I think it kind of goes against human nature and human psychology, and in such that it kind of de-incentivizes us in terms of productivity. If you have an employee and you say, I want you to get this set amount of work done, it doesn't matter the amount of time you do it, and then you have another employee who you say, you're gonna be at work for 40 hours this week, I want you to get the same amount of work done, that employee is gonna spend the whole 40 hours. Whereas the other employee who you tell, get the amount of work done in whatever amount of time it takes you, and then the rest of the time is yours, guarantee that person every time is going to get the work done quicker, faster, and more efficient, because that's just the way human nature works. It's the way our brains work. You become more inventive, you become more creative, and you learn to become more productive and efficient if you're incentivized. For me, that's kind of what I took from this book, is that, I don't have to be putting in a set amount of my time and donating a set amount of my finite amount of time to be productive and to contribute value. If I can do it in a different way, a more efficient way, then yeah, I need to look for ways to do that. And it just makes your brain kind of think outside the box when you're forced to find ways to provide value to people in more efficient ways, and you're not just on this like rat race, 40-hour work week mentality where you're gonna fill the hours with work regardless. It's an excellent read. If you're gonna read only 1 or 2 books on this list, make that one of them. Lastly, and this is number 1 on the list, and this may not be necessarily the best book in terms of changing your life depending on where you are in your journey, but for me, I think because I found this book early, I was either in late college or early med school and I read it. This is the book that kind of opened my mind to a different paradigm, a different way of thinking in terms of finance and career. This book is Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it's a very short read, it's a very easy read. Robert Kiyosaki kind of tells it in a story where he pairs 2 different philosophies. One is his poor dad, as he calls him, which is his biologic father, who was a professor and was of the mentality that you get a good education, you get a good job, a well-paying job as an employee. And he kind of contrasts this to the philosophy of his rich dad, or his friend's father, who was an investor and a real estate kind of mogul in Hawaii. And he just kind of compares the 2 ideologies. And obviously his rich dad does much better financially because he, dares to venture from the beaten path of grades, good education, good job. And that's kind of the tenet to this book, is that you can branch outside of that. You don't have to follow the traditional method of success of getting a good, well-paying job as an employee. And it's not necessarily about the money, but it's about opening your mind to the possibility that, there are other ways to be successful. There are other ways to make a living and a career out of doing things you're passionate about and being creative, starting businesses, investing, things that are more, classically maybe thought of as being riskier, but that, there are other ways to find happiness without actually just going down that, path of good education, good job, good career, that kind of thing. For me, that's worked well, is following that path that I was taught to, make good grades, get a good education, get into the good college, get into the good medical school, get into, a good residency, and then you try to get a good job. It's just, a very set out path. But, I've also tried to branch out and kind of start different businesses or start different ideas, start this YouTube channel, that kind of thing. That book is what kind of rewired my brain to think that there are other ways to be, to have a career, to be successful. It doesn't have to just be this path that is beaten into us from the education system. That's the book that kind of spurred for me this whole way of seeking out becoming financially independent and kind of the financial independence movement of self-financial education. This book is what kind of turned that on for me. I don't know why I picked this book up 6 or 7 years ago, but I'm glad I did. And so it's a good place to start. It's super easy to read. It's written in a story format, as I said. So that's kind of what started it for me. Highly recommend reading that book. Guys, I know a lot of these books are kind of geared toward personal finance, but that was, for me, again, kind of the missing piece in education, which I think is probably the case for a lot of people, at least that have gone through the public education system in the United States. And so if you're looking to kind of educate yourself on personal finance, kind of just think of other ways, that you can be happy outside of, just the 9-to-5 rat race kind of thing. Some of these books kind of open your mind to those possibilities, and then it just kind of snowballs on itself. You get one idea and then you find another book, it opens up another idea. And for me, that's kind of just what led to, my goal to kind of seek out financial independence and personal finance. And 5 books are a good place to start. Consider the number 1 and number 2 on this list if you're just gonna, pick 1 or 2 from the list. Just get them as an audiobook, if nothing else. Just listen to these as an audiobook because it's super easy just to turn that on while you're driving or something, while you're doing chores, whatever. They're super easy. You can listen to them in probably a day or 2. And the value, the return on investment from these books is just so high that I think, it would be a bad idea not to, basically. Anyways, these are 5 of the books that I found to be kind of life-changing for me. If you guys have books that kind of fit into this for you, leave it down in the comments below. I like to see, and maybe I'll check those out. Guys, I hope you guys found some value in this video. I'll link all those books down below if you're interested in any of them. If you guys did find value in the video, consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. Zach with Dr. Eyeball MD, and I'll see you guys in the next one.